Hello, and welcome to Artistic Differences. Today in Artistic Differences, we're covering something very special. Back in the late 50s, there was live TV. I'm talking about live drama. And before the man himself who created Twilight Zone, Rod Serling, did the Twilight Zone, he did something called Playhouse 90. And the feature was Requiem for a Heavyweight. And yes, it is about boxing, but a lot more than that. It's something that you're really going to get the feels from. So I'm going to basically take them into the beginning, and then you guys can finish up. In the beginning, what you have is a fighter who he's fought over 111 fights, and he's finally coming to the end of his career. But all he knows is fighting. So now he's got to move on and find what it is to be not a boxer.
Yeah, I mean, the movie starts with him losing what I guess is his final fight, basically, and the doctor saying, like, you've had it, you're going to take on serious damage if you get back in the ring. And I suppose if a doctor, if a doctor says something like that or puts it in writing, I would imagine that's the end of the fighter's career. I mean, there's commissioners and all kinds of people that you would have to run that through. There's a lot of safety precautions in place, but boxing was a really different sport back in the 50s for a lot of reasons. Like, number one, it was more violent, there were less rules, there were less safety precautions, there was less understanding about the long-term damage. And number two, because of how new television was, and that's really what makes this particular movie special, is that, like, television is very young when this movie gets put on. Maybe 10 years old. I mean, it's a leftover from World War II. And that's still fresh on everybody's mind. But also the fact that you go so early into television's history, there's no nationwide star because of TV. There's a handful of networks. Television is considered I guess a lesser medium, and was for a long time. I mean, it's not like it just happened then. So there wasn't.
Can I stop you right quick?
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the, I mean, you're absolutely dead on with all that. Let's talk about some of the commercials we saw. We saw a commercial for Camel.
Yeah, Camel cigarettes.
Camel cigarettes. Yeah. There were actually several ads for Camel cigarettes.
Long ads.
Yes.
Like, I mean, probably a minute.
What I thought was interesting is back then they were trying to really sell the cigarette by showing you what they considered to be real masculine men. They had a...
smoking mild.
There was it did say mild. There was a baseball player. And there was a sailor.
Yeah, a guy with a boat who was instantly manly and cool.
He had his own boat. Yeah. I mean, he probably brought chicks out there.
I mean, the commercial gives you like 20 seconds on how awesome this guy is, and he happens to smoke.
Right.
Cigarettes.
So before they say the cigarette, they say the guy that you want to be.
Yeah.
But anyway, and this is how watching the show was. You're going into the commercials and you're back to the drama.
Yeah, it's interesting how, like, there was no "we'll be right back" after a word from our sponsor. None of that. Like, it was part of the show.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was intrinsic because it was live TV, that there was no way to divorce it.
It's so amazing to see live TV. Yeah. The cameras they use, you can tell the film is slightly different than what you're used to.
Oh, yeah.
And how they frame everything. It's just it's a great experience. It's like time traveling. You really have a respect for the craft. And the actors, I even think were better than some of the actors we have today, man. I mean,
oh yeah,
because they had to be. There was no take two, you know.
I mean, can you imagine the intensity? Like, behind the scenes, everybody is constantly rushing, getting ready for the next scene.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, essentially every scene is one take, and that's all you get.
You don't want to eat before you go on stage.
Yeah, you got to think about everything. It's insane.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention is moving forward with the plot. I thought it was great how Rod created this fighter whose name is the Mountain, and his coach and his manager. The movie focuses on their relationship, and one is like a father figure, and the other one, the manager, is more like using the Mountain as a means to make his own money. Mm-hmm. And so I want to just say that the plot deals with that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because even though the movie is all about boxing, there's not one fight in the movie. It's not it's not important for the plot for you to actually see anybody fight. The important part is to
You,
understand
I don't, yeah,
the
actually,
fighting's done.
the fighting, yeah,
It's
there is a.
And now here's the
There's
aftermath.
one act of violence, but there is no fighting.
No, it's really the aftermath of the end
the
of one man's
aftermath.
career.
And and what you can always count on with Rod Serling's writing is the emotion is there. He really plumbs the depths of the human emotion, and you can really feel connected to these characters. Let's hear from Bob and Brady. See what they have to say.
I really liked the movie. I like that it was in black and white. I think that added to the atmosphere of the movie, and that's kind of in line with the Twilight Zone episodes.
True.
Because a lot, the original, the whole series was in black and white, all 5 of them.
It's true, yeah.
So there was that, and when the guy was told that he couldn't box anymore, and he was looking for employment, and he really opened his heart and soul to that lady that was trying to
That
help him.
scene was powerful when he went to the unemployment
And
office.
I felt like I could connect with that. Like, you know, going in there, you need a job.
Yeah.
But what do I do after all these years? Just know that's all he knew was boxing. And
He actually was very much like a child too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's being forced to face a tremendous amount of truths about himself and the choices he's made.
Yeah.
He's uneducated. He has no experience. He
Ninth
doesn't-
grade.
Yeah, and he doesn't feel like he would be pleasant enough to look at to be in sales or something,
Well,
or to even be awake.
They actually tell you where he got the complex. They said they tried to set him up with a girl once, but the girl was afraid of him because this nasty boxer who maybe has cuts, he's very tall, and
Maybe his face was bruised up.
Maybe his face was bruised, and the girl reacted negatively, and then from then on, he shut down. The original journey is so true to Serling's work, and that's what really I aspire as a writer to notice those things so I can replicate it in my own style. Brady, we haven't heard from Brady really.
Well, kind of depressing.
Depressing.
I thought it was the same shit.
Well, you're right.
They do give you a pretty warm and happy ending, but it's not like a ride off into the sunset, I get the girl kind
You're not
of thing.
going to watch
It's
this
real.
movie with two
It's real.
prostitutes in an arm and a topless girls in the room with a bottle of
I
champagne.
mean, it's a very grounded movie. Like, it forces you to understand that this shit happens.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people with
It's
this
very
story.
true
Yeah.
to actual emotions and what we all go through. Because everybody's going to go through seasons, and a season will end, and you'll have to try to, well, how do I reinvent my life from here? And he was given support, and he had some struggle.
Changing his life. So it's kind of forced out. I mean, it's like he was forced into growing up, and then all of a sudden, randomly, he has to leave behind his 2 managers.
Yeah.
Right.
Face the real world alone without them. He doesn't jack shit. So it's like,
And I mean, the real theme of the movie is how much these people have profited from his pain over the past 14 years and how much they have riding on it to that moment. And the coach seems racked with guilt over it the whole movie. But the manager, the promoter, he clearly he has his own set of problems and he doesn't really give a shit about anything.
I think that's very true to the characteristics which make a good manager, which make a good coach. A good coach is almost going to be like a father figure. He's going to be close to your emotions. Where the manager, he has to think about money. He has to love money more than anybody else.
Mickey never would have bet against Rocky.
but
He never would have.
Well, Mick was not his manager though; it was his trainer.
Coach.
Yeah.
they're kind of
Mick
like a
loved him,
freaking
yeah.
married couple, like the loving, caring mother and the shitty dad.
Well, the shitty dad who
fucking
thinks-
off in the background.
Well, you know, dads think more about money because they are the breadwinners a lot of the times, especially in those times, and maybe that's what could be part of that influence. You know, and men are always expected to be the ones who produce security for everyone else. So maybe that's where that might come from for some guys. Like, hey, I'm obsessed with money because money is the thing that provides this, security for these people. I want to love me.
The manager had some gambling debts.
He did.
Yes. Yeah.
And because of that, he wanted to use the boxer and change him over to become a wrestler.
Yeah.
Yeah. To try and
For-
make money.
That was an interesting aspect
for
of the
money
movie.
reasons.
Which, it's funny, even back then that idea was around because a lot of times in modern day you do see a lot of these UFC stars like Ronda Rousey, they go on to be wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably their highest earning potential. Like once
Yeah.
you, that's the thing, man. Like once you've started to lose, it's kind of crazy to stick around too much longer because you're gonna get hurt really bad. Like there's gonna be long-term damage. But if you don't lose in front of a bunch of people repeatedly, then in the wrestling world you can still sell the fantasy of holy shit, this person's gonna kick everybody's ass in the room because you know they still have that kind of fame or momentum going, and that's something that again like. This is the kind of stuff that only exists now because of how nationwide television is.
Right.
In the time that this movie was being done, there was no way that a boxer would become like Iron Mike Tyson. He was just going to be a champion boxer, but he wasn't going to be this national star.
Oh yeah, because
Muhammad
the
Ali
media
had
got more explosive as time went.
Yeah, and it just the draw of your name is what a lot of fighters are going to have to fall back on one day. You know, and that's something that certainly when Ronda Rousey went to wrestling, certainly that was something she had in mind. When Mike Tyson would do his little cameos on pay-per-views for Vince McMahon, I mean, Vince McMahon knew what he was doing. Like, it didn't matter that Mike Tyson looked half the size of all of his wrestlers. He was still, I mean, he knocked people out, and that was that.
I want to say this aspect that really stuck out to me, and I felt like really was one of the major points of the movie. As simple-minded as this guy was from the country, who they called the Mountain, who was the boxer, he was a man of integrity. And what he kept saying throughout the whole movie was, I've never taken a fall, meaning that he never was paid off to lose a fight. And I thought and that's also what he stressed when they wanted him to become a wrestler.
His dignity.
He said, I have my dignity because I've never taken, in his eyes, it was like taking a fall.
Yeah.
It wasn't real. And I feel like
You were getting paid
to him, it wasn't about the money.
Yeah.
It really was about the pride of knowing that he was good at something and it was an honest thing, you know?
Yeah.
So I thought that was another message. And you had the woman at the unemployment office kind of help trying to bring that, you know, was in alignment with that, was trying to show him a different life where he could have integrity working with children.
It's an interesting glimpse at how people saw combat sports back then too. I mean, the boxer only felt glorious as a boxer. The second he wasn't a boxer, he almost felt like, it's almost like he assumed people would think he was a bum or a crazy person or a drunk or something, you know, or dangerous even. And then the way they all spoke about pro wrestlers and the resistance to go into it was like they looked down on it so hard.
Well, you know what? Maybe back then pro wrestling was seen. I think back then it was probably seen less respectful than it is today.
I mean,
today we have Hulk Hogan, like, you know, not today, but Hulk Hogan pretty much changed wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, him and Vince McMahon together definitely changed the
Right.
face of it.
But I'm saying it's more
hard to
respectable
say.
these days.
Yeah.
If you were to say to somebody in this year, hey, I work for the WWE, I'm a wrestler, they go, oh, wow, that's cool. Maybe back in the 50s, if you said that, they go, you're a geek.
I mean, there's probably a pretty big divide, just like there is now, of people that like it and think of you as an athlete, and other people that just see you as an overpaid clown.
Right, and that's what he kept saying.
Yeah, clown.
They wanted to put on a costume. He's like, you see, I'm a clown. He was looking in the mirror, and he's like, I'm a clown.
I want to say something about Jack Palance. Up till this movie, seeing this movie, I had only seen him in
That wasn't Jack Palance.
No, I think it was.
Was it?
Yeah, at the end we saw Jack Palance.
Okay.
Yeah,
in the credits.
I really thought that wasn't Jack
I
Palance.
remember
I thought all the prosthetic.
I remember you saying it is Jack. I mean, we looked into it. It
The
said Jack
credits
Palance.
said Jack Palance.
Okay, all right. Wow.
I had never
Yeah.
seen him like this. I had only seen City Slickers.
Yeah, I've only seen old Jack Palance.
Old Jack Palance.
Yeah.
To be fair, the face had.
You don't even listen, the thing is, that's how good of an actor he is. He became this character. You didn't see Jack Palance.
First,
He was like,
my first experience with Jack Palance was in Batman, the very first.
oh, my number one.
You know the scene I'm talking about? Where
Yeah.
he's-
Don't forget your lucky Jack.
That was
Yeah.
And so at first you're trying to put that face and that voice with the young Jack Palance, and it's like, yeah, there's something familiar there, but there's not the familiar Jack we know.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting to see him in that.
I guess his face was just born.
I would like you to, before we end this and give it the rating and everything, I would like you to tell the audience about the insight that you had, or the information you had about how Rod Serling felt about the commercials interrupting
All right.
the sanctity
Yeah.
of this drama that he wrote.
Very inappropriate times.
But
So-
I mean, I enjoyed the commercials, but Rod Serling did not, because
Well, it's sort of an insult to his art, I guess. I mean, it's hard not to dork out over Rod Serling if you're a cinephile.
can you imagine you're making love to your wife or something, and then a commercial came on during the sex?
I mean, it's.
Like your wife's like, no, I need to see this commercial. Darling.
I'm sure to the artist
hold that
I'm
thing
sure to
you're
the
doing.
artist it feels a lot like that. I mean,
Right,
but
I'm
that's the
making
thing.
love
Is
to
he
you
specifically
story-wise.
said, like, how am I supposed to get the audience invested? How am I supposed to tell a compelling and intelligent story when every 15 minutes I'm interrupted by a cartoon bunny trying to sell toilet paper?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think that puts it in the best words it possibly could right there. I mean, that sums it up. But therein lies the nature of TV. And I remember, like,
And we're still haunted by that these days. Like you're on YouTube trying
at
to
first,
meditate.
at first you think, like, yeah, I see his point, and you laugh at it, and then you're like, every 15 minutes, shit, try every 5. Like, that's where we are now. You know,
Yeah.
because, I mean, TVs are just, like, sitting billboards inside your home.
I'll tell you this: after watching
Advertising.
this, I wanted to start smoking Camel cigarettes again.
Yeah.
Uh,
Using a gas stove.
I thought the gas oven that they advertised had a timer on it. That they said if you put the timer on while you're out doing your stuff, the oven will turn on by itself and cook your meal, and when you get home, it'll be ready. And you were saying that might be not too safe,
Yeah.
Yeah, open flames.
I was-
but at least you won't be there when it.
I mean, I have an electric stove in my house, and I haven't seen a gas stove in a house in a while.
We have them in my crappy apartments.
Yeah.
And they're
They're
sketchy.
probably built in the 60s or something.
They're a little frightening. Yeah, especially when you smell that gassy smell, and you're like, oh wait a minute, this could be the end of my life.
Yeah, there's some apartments in Greensboro that'll have just odd smells through the whole building sometimes, and it's not like, oh, something died. It's like, I feel like this is a chemical I shouldn't be breathing.
All right, guys, should we go to the rating? You ready for the rating?
Yeah, we got way off the rails. Yeah, let's get.
All right, we go this way. What's your rating?
I
Bob
really-
says
I really like the movie. 8.
gives it an 8. Okay, you gave the last movie an 8. Okay, so you're Mr. 8.
Let me 8.5.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You sure not 8.3?
Alright.
Okay, 8.5 for Bob.
It'll go 8.
Brandon.
I mean, this is a movie that's really hard to find anything wrong with or anything to complain about. From the acting to the writing, the cinematography, the fact that it was done live has to give it way. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm incredibly biased because it's Rod Serling, but I gotta give it a 10.
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
it is a perfect movie.
It's our first 10.
It's
Yeah,
a perfect
all right.
movie. And I don't give that lightly. I know it's coming in at like the 3rd episode,
Yeah.
but I love to shit on movies way more than I like to like.
I'll tell you what. It's hard not to give a high rating to someone's work that you absolutely
I mean, he's the
adore.
maestro.
Yeah. Rod Serling is one of the best ever, because he taps into what it is to be human. It's not just entertainment. Like, you leave Rod Serling's work probably a better person than you were before you watched it.
Well, he makes you think.
He makes you think.
It's like a modern day
Yeah.
Aesop. man.
And I would
It's
have
all
to
fake.
say, definitely, I'll give it an 8. An 8. Brady.
I thought, despite my deep-seated hatred of boxing and sports in general, I thought every good story. You know, I liked it.
I mean, it's not necessarily a pro sports story either. I mean, it's really showing you a dark side.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I thought it was. I mean, I wonder if anyone in the '50s actually noticed all the underlying, not direct at you themes and fucking,
It's
sort
it
of
makes
parental
you
stuff
wonder.
for the grown
Yeah.
ups, like.
Because
Because
when we think
saw
50s TV, we think like Leave It to Beaver. We think
Yeah.
such light bubblegum
Yeah.
stuff, and this is not that. Even though
No.
there was no cursing, there was no sex, there was no nudity or drugs or any of that, but still,
There
it
wasn't
felt
even-
so
yeah.
heavy and dark the whole time, though.
I didn't think they showed him drinking that beer that they poured.
Not really, no.
Yeah, I know.
But it
Um,
felt so heavy the whole time.
Yeah,
There's violins. Or them violins.
Yeah.
violins.
That there was so much to what they were trying to say to that. Like, hey, there's you don't have to be just because one world ends. It won't stop you from rebuilding
And, then
and
there's
noticing
some,
other things. You know.
You know, he's clearly on like. When she first met him, she's probably thinking he's kind of half-hearted.
I mean, maybe.
So, but she's like, "Oh, I want to go date this retard."
Right.
Well, he's super
There's some
anxious
question.
and awkward at
Right.
first, and
He's like a child,
defensive.
yeah.
He's really defensive because he doesn't necessarily like himself. You know.
I wanted to say that this,
He hasn't even had time to think about
Did you
who he
give a
is.
number?
All he was.
Yeah, you have to give a number. 8. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Mr.
Yeah.
Serling never disappoints.
Hanging on for the commercials were amazing, and I loved them.
Yeah, the commercials
Yeah.
they deserve their own video.
But
like they deserve.
I would
their
have
own
loved to
review.
have watched them at the end of it and not fucking with the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe they can make a version sometime in the future where those are edited out.
We should mention that this is the original version
Yeah.
put out by Playhouse 90. Am I right? Playhouse 90. Yeah. So there's a film version that was done in the 60s. But
I think this may be our first artistic agreeance.
I mean, it's pretty deep. I mean, it's Rod Serling, dude.
I
Like
think
you have to be
I
a
wanted to-
jackass.
Yeah.
I wanted to note that this movie may have influenced the writing of Rocky.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Also, not only did it influence the writing of Rocky, but this was actually made into a movie. I think twice after this original
Yeah,
broadcast.
Muhammad Ali shows up in the 1960s.
Oh.
Yeah. Maybe we'll review the next one,
Yeah,
1962.
that's a good idea.
Ready to close?
Yeah, I think
All right.
that covers it. I mean, we could talk about Rod Serling's work for days. So yeah, we got.
Who are you?
I am Bob.
Who are you?
Who the hell
Who am I?
I was Brandon,
I'm Eric. This is Brady the lady,
as usual.
and this is or was Artistic Differences.
Differences.